At my daughter's school pickup, another parent asked, "Isn't it weird your nanny drives a more expensive car than you?" I forced a laugh while watching my daughter climb into the Tesla Model X. "She's very good with investments," I said. The truth was much simpler and much more complicated. The woman everyone assumed was my nanny was actually my mother, but I couldn't tell anyone that. Not after what we'd done. 6 months earlier, Mom had shown up at my door at 2 a.m. with a black eye and a duffel bag. "I left him," she said. My stepfather owned half the commercial real estate in our city. He also had a temper that got worse with age and used Mom as his personal punching bag. For 20 years, she'd stayed, hidden bruises under designer clothes. That night was different. He went after Chloe, she whispered. Chloe was my half-sister, 15 years old. The only good thing to come from Mom's marriage to that monster. Mom's escape plan was brilliant. For years, she'd been skimming from household accounts. Small amounts, random patterns, money that disappeared into cryptocurrency, bounced through exchanges until untraceable. She'd learned from YouTube tutorials after my stepfather passed out drunk. By the time she left, she had 1.2 million hidden away. The problem was my stepfather's reach, his connections, the private investigators he'd already hired. "They'll find me," Mom said. That's when I suggested the unthinkable. What if she hid in plain sight? The next morning I posted, "Looking for a live-in nanny, Spanish-speaking preferred." Mom had grown up in Mexico City. Her accent had faded after decades of my stepfather insisting she speak properly. But she could bring it back. We created Catalina Reyes, recent widow, references from families in Mexico, all fake numbers forwarding to burner phones I controlled. We dyed her blonde hair back to black, replaced designer clothes with Target basics. The transformation was stunning. My sophisticated mother became invisible to her former social circle. She moved into our guest room, started picking up my daughter from school. At school functions, she'd stand with other nannies while my stepfather's friends walked past without a glance. Once, his business partner's wife asked her to fetch a forgotten purse. Mom smiled, said, "Of course, senora," and did it. The hardest part was Chloe. We told everyone she was at boarding school in Switzerland. Really, she was taking online classes from my basement, only leaving after dark. The Tesla was Mom's one rebellion. "If I'm going to pretend to be the help," she said, "I'm going to be well-paid help." She'd bought it with crypto, registered to her fake identity. Other parents whispered constantly. Some assumed I was paying too much. Others created theories. Rich family back home, successful ex-husband. No one suspected the truth. Everything worked perfectly until last Tuesday. I was at the grocery store when I saw him, my stepfather, looking older and meaner. His new girlfriend, young enough to be his daughter, clutched his arm. I pulled my cap lower and turned away. Then I heard his phone call. The DNA matches. She's definitely still in the area. My blood went cold. Hair from her daughter's dance recital. The PI pulled it from her car seat. A pause. The 5-year-old. My daughter. They'd tested my daughter's DNA. If we find the kid, we find them both. Check every school in a 50-mile radius. I abandoned my cart and drove home in panic. Mom was in the kitchen, helping my daughter with crafts, laughing, covered in glitter. "We need to run," I said. Mom saw my face. "He found us?" "Close." She stood, glitter falling like snow. "I'm tired of running." That's when my daughter said something that changed everything. "Why does Grandpa Richard want to hurt Abuela?" We froze. She'd never called Mom Abuela before. Never mentioned Richard. "What did you say, baby?" She kept coloring. "The man at school asked about Abuela, showed me pictures. Said Grandpa Richard misses her." Mom grabbed my arm. "What man?" "The nice one with candy. He comes every day now." The crayon in my hand snapped. "Penny," I said, kneeling beside her. "What nice man?" She looked up with those innocent brown eyes that mirrored my own. "He waits by the playground fence. Yesterday he asked if Abuela makes me Mexican food." Mom's face went sheet white. "Did you tell him anything?" "I said she makes the best quesadillas." Penny beamed. "He said Grandpa Richard loves Mexican food too." I felt sick. This wasn't just surveillance, this was grooming, gathering information through a child. "Penny, listen carefully," I said. "If that man talks to you again, you run to Mrs. Patterson and tell her immediately. Don't talk to him. Don't take anything from him. Promise me." Her smile faded. "Is he a bad man?" Before I could answer, Mom grabbed both our hands. "We're going on an adventure," she said, forcing brightness into her voice. "Right now." I started mentally cataloging what we needed. Cash, fake IDs, new phones. Mom had prepared for this scenario, but I'd hoped we'd never need it. "Go pack one bag," I told Penny. "Only your most special things." As she ran upstairs, Mom turned to me. "There's something else. I saw him yesterday. My stepfather." My blood pressure spiked. "At the coffee shop on 5th Street. He was with 2 men. One looked like security. The other," she paused, "professional, clean, the type who handles problems quietly. You think he'd actually..." "I think he's done waiting, and I think he's done with half measures." We both knew what that meant. My stepfather hadn't built his empire by accepting losses gracefully. If he couldn't get Mom back, he'd make sure no one else could have her either. 20 minutes later, we were in my Honda Civic with 3 bags and $15,000 in cash Mom had stashed in various hiding places around the house. The Tesla stayed behind, too trackable. "Where are we going?" Penny asked from the back seat. "To see Aunt Esperanza," Mom said, slipping back into her accent. There was no Aunt Esperanza, but there was a safe house network Mom had discovered through an underground railroad for abuse survivors, women who'd escaped and now helped others do the same. The first safe house was a farmhouse 2 states away. The owner, a woman named Delilah who'd escaped her own nightmare 15 years ago, met us at the door with knowing eyes. "How bad?" she asked. "Private investigators, DNA samples, Men with guns, I said. She nodded. Come in. You're safe here. The house was full of other women and children, all with the same haunted look, all running from different versions of the same monster. That first night, Penny slept between Mom and me on a narrow bed. She whispered, "Are we really safe?" I stroked her hair. "Yes, baby. We're safe." But I was lying. Safety was an illusion when you're running from someone with unlimited resources and no conscience. 3 days later, Delilah found us in the kitchen. "You need to see this," she said, holding up her phone. The local news was running a story. Prominent businessman offers $50,000 reward for missing family members. My stepfather's face filled the screen. He looked distraught, worried, the perfect grieving husband and grandfather. "My wife suffers from severe depression," he told the reporter. "She took our daughter and granddaughter. We just want them to come home safely." The photo they showed was from Mom's driver's license, but digitally aged and altered to make her look unstable. Wild eyes, unkempt hair. Then they showed a photo of me and Penny. "They could be anywhere," he continued. "Please, if you see them, call immediately. They need medical attention." $50,000. Posted on every news station, social media platform, and police database. We were officially fugitives now. "He's forcing our hand," Mom said quietly. Delilah turned off the TV. "We need to get you to the next house, tonight." The second safe house was an apartment above a laundromat in a city I'd never heard of. The woman who ran it, Vera, was barely 30, but moved like she'd seen lifetimes of violence. "Your stepfather's smart," she said, studying the news coverage, "making you look unstable. If anyone spots you, they'll call for the reward, not the police. Harder to verify your side of the story." She was right. We weren't just running anymore. We were actively hunted. Penny started having nightmares. She'd wake up screaming about the man with candy. In her dreams, he'd grown claws and followed her everywhere. "I want to go home," she sobbed one night. "We can't, Mija," I whispered. "It's not safe there anymore. But I miss my room, and my friends, and Mrs. Patterson." My heart broke. She was 5 years old and already learning that home wasn't a place but a feeling. And right now, that feeling was gone. On day 6, everything changed. Vera burst into our room at 3 a.m. "They found us. We have 60 seconds. I grabbed Penny while Mom snatched our bags. Through the window, I could see black SUVs surrounding the building, men in tactical gear moving into position. But Vera was ready. She led us through a hidden panel in the bathroom wall into the adjacent building. From there, down a service corridor to a waiting van. As we drove away, I watched through the rear window as armed men stormed the apartment we'd just escaped. "How?" I asked Vera. "Someone recognized you at the grocery store," called the tip line. $50,000 was a lot of motivation for people struggling to pay bills. The third safe house wasn't a house at all. It was a cabin in the mountains. So remote we had to hike the last 2 miles. The woman who met us there, Iris, had scars on her neck and arms. "Welcome to the end of the world," she said with a grim smile. "No electricity, no phone service, no running water, but also no way for anyone to track us." That night, sitting by candlelight, Mom finally told me the whole truth. "It wasn't just the money," she said. "There are other things. Documents, evidence." She'd been gathering evidence of my stepfather's crimes for years. Tax evasion, money laundering, bribes to city officials, and worse. Much worse, she whispered, glancing at Penny, who was sleeping nearby. "What kind of worse?" Mom's voice dropped even lower. "Young girls, from his construction sites, undocumented, vulnerable." My stomach dropped. "How many?" "Too many. And I have proof." That's when I understood. This wasn't about an abusive marriage. This was about bringing down a predator who'd been operating for decades. "Why didn't you go to the police?" Mom laughed bitterly. "Half the police department is on his payroll. The DA golf with him every weekend. The judges owe their elections to his contributions. So what's the plan?" "There is no plan," she said. "There's just survival." But I was already thinking, if we couldn't run forever and we couldn't fight him directly, maybe we could expose him publicly. Social media, news outlets he didn't control, international attention. The next morning, I proposed my idea. Mom shook her head. "You don't understand what he's capable of. If we surface even for a moment, he'll find us. And when he does," she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. But I couldn't accept a life of hiding. Penny deserved better. She deserved a childhood. That's when Iris made a suggestion that changed everything. "There's someone you should meet," she said. 2 days later, a woman arrived at the cabin. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, expensive clothes that somehow looked natural in the wilderness. "I'm Rebecca," she said, "and I specialize in making problems like your stepfather disappear." She wasn't talking about murder. She was talking about something more elegant, more permanent. "I represent a consortium of survivors," she explained. "Women who've escaped situations like yours. We pool resources, share intelligence, and when necessary, we take action." She spread photos across the rough wooden table, screenshots of financial records, bank transfers, encrypted communications. "Your stepfather isn't just a local predator," she said. "He's part of a network, international. We've been tracking them for 3 years." Mom studied the photos. "This is from his private email account. How did you—" "We have people everywhere," Rebecca said simply. "Inside his organization, his businesses, his social circle." She pulled out another set of documents, including his new girlfriend. The young woman I'd seen with him at the grocery store stared back from a surveillance photo. But now I could see what I'd missed before. The calculation in her eyes, the way she positioned herself to hear every word. "Natasha's been feeding us information for 18 months. Rebecca continued. Your escape accelerated our timeline. They'd been planning to expose the entire network. My stepfather's public breakdown over his missing family had created the perfect distraction. We need you to surface, Rebecca said. One final time, to deliver the kill shot. Absolutely not, I said immediately. It's too dangerous. It's the only way to end this permanently, she countered. He'll never stop hunting you. Never stop hurting others. This is your chance to stop him forever. Mom was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. What would we need to do? Rebecca smiled. Give him exactly what he wants. One last family reunion. The plan was insane and perfect. In 3 days, my stepfather would be hosting his annual charity gala. 500 guests, media coverage, politicians and business leaders from across the state. We would walk in through the front door. He won't hurt you publicly, Rebecca explained. Too many witnesses. Too much scrutiny. He'll try to control the narrative, play the relieved family man. And while he's doing that, we'll be uploading everything to the internet. Financial records, video evidence, testimony from his victims. By the time dessert is served, his entire empire will be collapsing. The consortium had been preparing for months. Synchronized releases across multiple platforms, backup servers, international journalists standing by. But it required us to walk into the lion's den. That night, I couldn't sleep. The plan was brilliant. But what if something went wrong? What if we miscalculated? Penny woke up around 2 a.m. Mommy, I had the dream again. The man with candy? She nodded. But this time, you were there. And Abuela. And we weren't scared anymore. Maybe it was a sign. Or maybe I was grasping at hope. The next morning, Rebecca returned with a team. Makeup artists, stylists, security experts. If we're doing this, we're doing it right, she said. They transformed Mom back into the woman she'd been before. Elegant, polished, untouchable. The bruises were gone now, but she still carried herself like someone expecting a blow. Remember, Rebecca said as they worked, you're not victims anymore. You're survivors. And survivors fight back. For Penny, they created a princess dress, pink and sparkly. The kind of outfit that would make her impossible to ignore or intimidate. I look pretty, she said, twirling in front of the mirror. You look brave, I corrected. The night of the gala, we sat in the parking lot of the country club for 10 minutes, gathering courage. Last chance to change your mind, I told Mom. She checked her lipstick in the mirror. I'm tired of being afraid. The red carpet was already packed with photographers when our limo pulled up. Rebecca had insisted on the dramatic entrance. Flashbulbs exploded as we stepped out. Mom held Penny's hand while I flanked the other side. 3 generations of women who'd survived. The crowd parted as we walked toward the entrance. Whispers followed in our wake. Then I saw him. My stepfather stood at the top of the stairs, flanked by security. His face cycled through surprise, rage, and calculation before settling on relief. Thank God, he called out, loud enough for the cameras. My family's safe. He descended the stairs with arms outstretched, the picture of a worried patriarch reunited with his loved ones. But I saw the fury in his eyes, the promise of retribution. Smile, Mom whispered. We're almost home. As he embraced her, I watched his hand squeeze her arm hard enough to leave bruises. His lips moved close to her ear, words too quiet for the cameras. Mom's face never changed, but I saw her stiffen. What did he say? I asked as we moved inside. He said we have 5 minutes to talk privately, or Penny disappears forever. The ballroom was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers, tables of donors and dignitaries, a stage where my stepfather would give his annual speech about helping families in crisis. The irony was nauseating. Where's the private room? I asked Rebecca through my earpiece. 2nd floor, north wing. We'll be monitoring. But monitoring wouldn't stop a bullet. We made our way through the crowd. People approached constantly, congratulating my stepfather on our safe return, asking concerned questions about our ordeal. He played his part perfectly. The relieved husband, the protective grandfather. We're just grateful they're safe, he kept saying. That's all that matters. At exactly 8:30, he guided us toward the stairs. Time for our reunion, he said with a smile that never reached his eyes. The private room was his study. Dark wood, expensive art, photos of him with senators and governors. The moment the door closed, his mask dropped. You stupid bitch, he hissed at Mom. Do you have any idea what you've cost me? Your dignity? She replied calmly. His hand shot out, but I stepped between them. Touch her and I scream, I said. 500 witnesses downstairs. He laughed. Scream all you want. I own half those witnesses. And the other half will believe whatever I tell them to believe. That's when Penny spoke up from behind us. Are you the bad man? My stepfather turned. For a moment, his expression softened, the grandfather mask sliding back into place. No, princess. I'm family. Family doesn't hurt people, she said solemnly. Sometimes they do, he replied, kneeling to her level. Sometimes people need to be disciplined. I'd heard enough. We had what we came for. Him dropping his guard. Everything was being recorded. We're leaving, I announced. No, he said, standing slowly. You're not. That's when I noticed the men by the door. Not regular security. Different men. Harder faces. You see, he continued, there's been a terrible accident. A car crash on the way home from the gala. Very tragic. Entire family lost. Mom grabbed Penny protectively. You're insane, I said. I'm practical. This ends tonight. My reputation survives. You don't. He walked to his desk and opened a drawer. Inside was a pistol. The official story will be grief, he said, examining the weapon. Husband driven to desperation by his family's betrayal. Murder-suicide. Very sad. The recordings will show a loving family reunion. Nothing more. He'd thought of everything, except one thing. Rebecca's voice crackled through my earpiece. Now. Every screen in the building, from the phones to the televisions to the presentation monitors, suddenly blazed to life. Financial records, wire transfers, bank statements showing millions in payments to shell companies. Then came the videos. Girls who looked too young, too scared, too broken. My stepfather's voice was clearly audible in several clips, giving orders, making threats, laughing at their tears. Downstairs, I could hear screaming, chairs overturning, people rushing for exits. "What have you done?" he whispered. "What you should have done years ago," Mom said. Told the truth. The gun shook in his hand. His empire was collapsing in real time and he knew it. "It doesn't matter," he said finally. "You'll still be dead." He raised the pistol. That's when the door exploded inward. FBI agents flooded the room. Red laser dots danced across his chest. "Drop the weapon." For a moment he hesitated. I could see him calculating, weighing his options. Then Penny said something that broke the spell. "Abuela, I'm scared." He looked at her. Really looked. And something in him crumbled. The gun clattered to the floor. 3 years later, I'm sitting in a different house, in a different state, watching my daughter play in a backyard that's actually ours. My stepfather died in prison. Officially, it was a heart attack. Unofficially, the consortium had a longer reach than even I'd realized. Mom goes by her real name now. She runs a foundation for domestic violence survivors. The same network that saved us now helps others escape. Chloe lives with us. She's 18 now, about to start college. She's studying law. Says she wants to put monsters like her father behind bars. Sometimes I catch Mom staring out windows, not like a prisoner anymore, like someone watching for possibilities instead of threats. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked her yesterday. The running, the fear, the constant looking over our shoulders? Any of it. She considered the question, while Penny chased fireflies in the gathering dusk. "I regret not leaving sooner," she said finally. "I regret all the years I let him steal from us. But not fighting back? Never that. We gave other women permission to fight back too." She was right. The network had grown since our escape. Hundreds of women now, maybe thousands. All connected, all protecting each other. My phone buzzes with a text from Rebecca. "New family needs extraction. You available?" I look at Mom. She nods. "Always." I text back. Because that's what survivors do. We survive, and then we help others do the same. Last week, Penny asked if we'd ever have to run again. "No, baby," I told her. "We're done running." "Good," she said. "I like it here." "Why?" "Because here, nobody has to pretend to be someone they're not." She was right. For the first time in any of our lives, we were simply ourselves. Mom was no longer Catalina the nanny or the abused wife hiding her bruises. She was exactly who she was meant to be. A warrior who'd fought her way to freedom and now helped others do the same. I wasn't the scared daughter watching her mother suffer in silence anymore. I was a woman who'd faced down a monster and won. And Penny was just a little girl who played in her own backyard, secure in the knowledge that the adults in her life would never let anyone hurt her. Sometimes survival isn't about escaping the monster. Sometimes it's about becoming something the monster never saw coming. A family that fights back. The first few months of freedom were harder than I'd expected. Not the practical stuff. Rebecca's consortium handled new identities, financial security, even therapy for all of us. It was the psychological adjustment that nearly broke us. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., convinced I could hear my stepfather's voice in the hallway. Mom would check the locks obsessively, sometimes 5 or 6 times before bed. Penny started hoarding food in her room, terrified we'd have to run again without warning. "It's normal," our therapist, Dr. Martinez, explained. "Your nervous systems are still calibrated for survival. It takes time to recalibrate for safety." Time was something we finally had. The legal proceedings stretched on for almost 2 years. My stepfather's arrest had triggered a massive federal investigation. The consortium's evidence had opened floodgates. Dozens of victims came forward, some from decades ago. His business empire unraveled systematically as investigators traced every transaction, every shell company, every payoff. I testified twice. Once in front of a grand jury, once during the trial itself. Both times, Mom sat in the front row, visible support that gave me strength when my voice wavered. The prosecution painted a picture of systematic abuse spanning 25 years. Young women trafficked through his construction sites. City officials bought and paid for. A network of silence maintained through fear and money. My stepfather's legal team tried to paint us as unstable. The bitter ex-wife, the troubled stepdaughter, the traumatized child. But Rebecca's people had prepared for this. Character witnesses, expert testimony, financial records showing Mom's meticulous planning and my stable employment history. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to life without possibility of parole. As they led him away, he turned to look at us one final time. The rage was gone. In its place was something that might have been regret, or might have been calculation. With him, I could never tell. He died 18 months into his sentence. The official cause was a heart attack, but Rebecca pulled me aside at Mom's birthday party and said, "Some problems solve themselves in prison, especially when word gets around about what you did to children." I didn't ask for details. Some truths are better left unexamined. The money was harder to handle than I'd expected. My stepfather's assets had been seized, but there was a victims' compensation fund. Mom received $2.3 million. I got $800,000. Penny had a trust fund set up for her education and future needs. Blood money, Mom called it initially. She didn't want to touch it, but Rebecca convinced her otherwise. "He stole decades of your life. This is just compound interest." Mom used hers to establish the Survivors Network Foundation. What started as an informal group of women helping women had become a legitimate nonprofit with safe houses across the country, legal aid for victims, and a 24-hour hotline staffed by survivors. I put most of my settlement into Penny's trust and used the rest for a house, our first real home in years. 3 bedrooms, a fenced backyard, and most importantly, an excellent security system that I actually understood how to operate. The house came with neighbors who became friends without knowing our history. To them, we were just a single mom, her daughter, and her mother, who'd moved to town for a fresh start, which in its way was true. Mrs. Kowalski next door would borrow cups of sugar and invite us to block parties. Mr. Chen across the street would wave from his garden and sometimes bring over vegetables he'd grown himself. Normal interactions with normal people who expected nothing from us except basic courtesy. It was intoxicating. Penny enrolled in the local elementary school as Penelope Martinez Chen. We decided to use Mom's maiden name and an invented surname that would throw off casual internet searches. Her teacher, Miss Rodriguez, was a young woman with genuine warmth who never pressed when Penny mentioned the time we lived in the mountains, or when Abuela was pretending to be our nanny. The nightmares faded gradually. Penny's first, then mine, finally Mom's. We all slept better knowing the monster was behind bars, then dead, then buried. But recovery isn't a straight line. About 8 months after we'd settled in, Penny came home from school unusually quiet. She picked at her dinner, barely responded to our questions about her day. Finally, she asked, "Mommy, what's a witness?" My blood chilled. Where did you hear that word? Tommy Brennan said his dad saw us on TV, said we were witnesses in a big trial. Mom and I exchanged glances. We'd been careful, but in a small town, secrets don't stay buried forever. We told the truth about someone who was hurting people. I explained carefully. Sometimes grown-ups have to do that to keep everyone safe. Was it Grandpa Richard? Even now, a year after his death, his name could still make my skin crawl. Yes, baby. Good, she said firmly. He was scary. That night, I called Dr. Martinez. It's actually healthy, she said. She's processing the experience in age-appropriate ways. The fact that she feels good about your actions suggests she's not traumatized by the testimony itself. But what if other kids ask questions? Then you tell them the truth, adjusted for their age level. You helped stop a bad person from hurting others. That's something to be proud of. She was right. We had nothing to be ashamed of. Still, I increased our security. New cameras, motion sensors, a direct line to the local police station, where Chief Hernandez had promised immediate response if we ever felt threatened. Probably unnecessary, Rebecca assured me during one of her quarterly check-ins. The network your stepfather was part of has been completely dismantled. 36 arrests across 6 states. The survivors are safe, but probably wasn't the same as definitely. Chloe adapted to freedom differently than the rest of us. She'd spent her teenage years in basements and safe houses, moving every few weeks. Stability was foreign to her. She enrolled in community college but dropped out after 1 semester. Too many people, too many questions about her background. I can't pretend to be normal, she told me one evening. We were sitting on the back porch, watching Penny practice cartwheels. I don't know how. Normal is overrated, I said. Besides, you're not supposed to be normal. You're supposed to be yourself. I don't know who that is. It was heartbreaking. She'd missed so many formative experiences, proms, dating, college parties, the ordinary mistakes teenagers make in safe environments. Mom had an idea. What if you worked with the foundation, she suggested. Help other girls who've been through similar experiences? Chloe considered it. Would I be good at that? You'd be perfect. You understand what they're going through in ways that textbook therapists never could. Within 6 months, Chloe had found her calling. She started as a peer counselor, then moved into case management. Her ability to connect with traumatized teenagers was remarkable. She sees through their masks, Mom observed proudly. Knows when they're hiding something or when they're ready to open up. Chloe also enrolled in online courses, psychology, social work, criminal justice, determined to formalize her expertise. I want to be able to help them legally too, she explained. Navigate the system. Make sure they're protected. At 19, she was already more mature than most adults I knew. The foundation grew rapidly. What started as a dozen safe houses became 50, then 100. The hotline received thousands of calls each month. Corporate donors began reaching out, impressed by the organization's success rate and transparency. Mom hired actual staff, social workers, lawyers, accountants. But she insisted that survivors remain at the center of every decision. We don't make choices about their lives without them, was her fundamental rule. I helped out when I could, mostly with financial planning and budgeting. My background in accounting proved useful for managing multiple properties and complicated legal situations. But mostly I focused on building a normal life for Penny. Soccer practice on Tuesdays, piano lessons on Thursdays, birthday parties and sleepovers, and all the ordinary childhood experiences I'd been too terrified to allow when we were running. She made friends easily. Sophia from down the street, Aiden from her soccer team, Maria from piano lessons, kids who knew nothing about our past and didn't need to. Sometimes I'd watch her playing with them and marvel at her resilience. She'd been through trauma that would devastate adults, but she laughed easily, trusted quickly, and slept soundly in her own bed. Children are remarkably adaptable, Dr. Martinez had explained. As long as they feel safe and loved, they can recover from almost anything. The safety part had taken work. Even now, 3 years later, I still did perimeter checks before bed. Still kept emergency bags packed in the closet. Still had protocols for different threat levels. But the love part came naturally. One evening, about 2 years after we'd settled in, Penny asked a question that stopped my heart. Mommy, why don't I have a daddy? We were making cookies, flour everywhere. Completely domestic and peaceful. The question came out of nowhere. I fumbled for words. We'd agreed never to lie to her. But how do you explain to a 7-year-old that her father is a question mark in your own past? That he was someone you met during the darkest period of your life, when you were rebuilding from your own trauma? Some families have mommies and daddies, I said finally. Some have 2 mommies or 2 daddies. Some have grandparents or aunts or uncles. We have me and you and Abuela and Chloe. That's our family. But where is my daddy? I took a breath. I don't know, baby. When you were born, it was just us. And we've been perfect together ever since. It was true, as far as it went. Penny's father had been a brief relationship during my own recovery, years before Mom escaped my stepfather. A good man who'd moved across the country for work before I'd realized I was pregnant. I'd tried to contact him once, but he'd remarried and started a new family. It seemed cruel to disrupt his life. Do you think he thinks about me? I think any daddy would be lucky to have you, I said honestly. She seemed satisfied with that answer, but I knew the questions would come up again. Childhood is full of comparisons, and eventually she'd noticed that most of her friends had fathers. That night I called Dr. Martinez again. It's developmentally appropriate, she assured me. And your answer was perfect. Honest, without being overwhelming. Should I try to find him? Only if you want to, not because you feel obligated. Penny has a stable, loving family structure. She doesn't need a father to be complete. She was right. Our family worked exactly as it was. But I did start thinking about it. Not finding Penny's biological father necessarily, but about relationships in general. It had been over 5 years since I'd dated anyone. Fear and constant movement hadn't exactly been conducive to romance. Now, with stability and safety, I wondered if there was room in my life for someone else. The thought terrified me. You're allowed to want things, Mom pointed out when I mentioned it. You've spent so long in survival mode that you forgot about living mode. She was dating, actually. A gentleman named Eduardo who ran the bookstore downtown. He knew nothing about our past beyond difficult previous circumstances. He brought her flowers, took her to movies, and treated her with the respect she'd never received from my stepfather. Does it feel strange? I asked her once. Being with someone who doesn't know everything? It feels normal, she said, which is strange in its own way. I understood. We'd been defined by our trauma for so long that normalcy felt foreign. But maybe that was the point. Maybe healing meant becoming people who could exist independently of what had been done to us. The opportunity came unexpectedly. Penny's soccer coach, David, was a few years older than me, divorced with a 10-year-old son on the team. He was patient with the kids, funny without being inappropriate, and had a smile that made me remember what attraction felt like. After a particularly good game, he approached me in the parking lot. Would you like to get coffee sometime? Without 20 kids running around screaming? My first instinct was to run, make excuses, build walls. Instead, I heard myself saying, I'd like that. Our first date was coffee at 11 a.m. on a Saturday. Public place, daylight, easy exit strategies. He told me about his divorce, amicable. They'd grown apart. They co-parented effectively. He asked about Penny's father, and I gave him the edited version. Brief relationship. He wasn't ready for fatherhood. We were better off without him. That must have been scary, he said. Doing it alone. I wasn't alone. My mom helped. Still, single motherhood is tough. He had no idea how tough, but he didn't need to. Not yet. We dated slowly. Coffee dates became lunch dates, became dinner dates. Always when Penny was with Mom or at friends' houses. I wasn't ready to introduce chaos into her stability. David was patient. Never pushed for more information about my past. Never pressured me to move faster than I was comfortable with. After 2 months, I told him I'd been in an abusive situation previously and needed to take things slowly. How slowly? He asked. Glacially. He laughed. I can do glacial. And he could. 3 more months before I introduced him to Penny. Another month before he met Mom and Chloe. 6 months before he stayed over for the first time. At each stage, I waited for red flags. Control issues, jealousy, demands for information I wasn't ready to share. Instead, he integrated into our lives like he'd always belonged. He helped Penny with homework, brought Mom books from his friend's bookstore, listened to Chloe talk about her foundation work without judgment. You know they're hiding something big, his ex-wife mentioned to him once. I know because he told me immediately afterward, along with his response. Everyone's hiding something, he'd said. As long as they're good to each other and good to their kids, it's none of my business. That's when I knew I loved him. The proposal came on Penny's 8th birthday, during her party in our backyard. Nothing dramatic or public, just a quiet question while we were cleaning up wrapping paper. Would you consider making this official? He asked, holding out a simple ring. I know your situation is complicated, but I'd like to be part of your family, officially. Before I could answer, Penny appeared at my elbow. Are you asking Mommy to marry you? She demanded. I am, David said seriously. What do you think about that? Penny considered it with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice. Will you still let me have ice cream for breakfast sometimes? That's a Mommy rule, not a David rule. And you won't be mean to Abuela or Chloe? Never. And if someone tries to hurt us, you'll help Mommy fight them? That question revealed everything. Even at 8, Penny understood that safety wasn't guaranteed, that families needed to protect each other. Yes, David said firmly. Always. Penny nodded approvingly. Then okay. I said yes before I could overthink it. We married 8 months later in our backyard, surrounded by the family we'd chosen and built. Rebecca flew in from D.C. Delilah and Vera came from their respective safe houses. Dr. Martinez attended as a friend rather than a therapist. Eduardo walked Mom down the aisle. Chloe was my maid of honor. Penny was flower girl and ring bearer simultaneously, a combination that suited her perfectly. David's vows were simple. I promise to love and protect this family for as long as you'll have me. Mine were harder to write. I promise to trust you with our hearts, even when fear tells me not to. Chief Hernandez performed the ceremony. He'd become more than just our local police contact over the years, a genuine friend who understood our need for security without judging our precautions. Do you, David, take this woman and her extraordinary family to be your wife and daughters? I do. Do you, Isabella, take this man to be your husband and protector? Isabella, my real name, which I'd started using again. Not the false identities or hidden personas. Just me. I do. The reception was small but perfect. Penny danced with David, her tiny feet on his shoes. Mom laughed at Eduardo's terrible jokes. Chloe gave a toast about chosen families being stronger than biological ones. Rebecca pulled me aside during the dancing. You did good, kid, she said. Building something beautiful after surviving something terrible. We all did. Not everyone makes it this far. Not everyone chooses healing over revenge. She was right. I could have spent my life angry, paranoid, isolated by what had happened to us. Instead, we'd built something better. That night, after all the guests had gone home and Penny was asleep, David and I sat on our back porch, still in our wedding clothes. Any regrets? He asked. Only that it took so long. Good things are worth waiting for. He was right. All the running, hiding, fear, it had led us here, to this house, this family, this life we'd created from nothing. 6 months later, David officially adopted Penny. She chose to keep Martinez Chen as her middle name, but took his last name as her own. I want to be a Martinez Chen Goldman, she announced to the judge. That way everyone knows where I come from and where I'm going. The judge, a woman in her 60s who'd probably seen everything, smiled and granted the request. That evening, Penny insisted on calling everyone she knew to announce her new name. I have the longest name in my class now, she told her friend Sophia. It's because I have the most family. Out of the mouths of babes. Now 3 years after the wedding, we've settled into a rhythm that feels natural. David coaches Penny's soccer team and has started a youth program for kids from difficult backgrounds. Mom's foundation has expanded internationally. Chloe finished her bachelor's degree and is applying to law school. I work part-time as a financial consultant for nonprofits, helping organizations like Mom's manage their resources effectively. It's work that feels meaningful without being overwhelming. Our house has become a gathering place for the extended family we've built. Weekend dinners with Mom and Eduardo, study sessions with Chloe, sleepovers for Penny's friends, holiday celebrations that fill every room with laughter. Sometimes I catch myself waiting for the other shoe to drop, for disaster to strike, for someone to threaten the peace we've built. Dr. Martinez says that's normal. Hypervigilance served you well when you were in danger. Now it's just an old habit that needs gentle correction. The correction comes in small moments. David's hand on my back during thunderstorms, Penny's sleepy voice calling, "Good night, Mommy," from her room, Mom's laughter during family game night, evidence that we're safe, that we've won. That love really can triumph over evil, even when evil has money and power and a head start. Last month, Rebecca called with news. We've identified another network, she said. Similar structure to your stepfather's operation. Different region, same tactics. My first instinct was to volunteer, to pack up and help coordinate another takedown. But then I looked around our kitchen. David making pancakes while Penny set the table, arguing about whether chocolate chips constitute a valid breakfast ingredient. Mom and Chloe planning a presentation for potential donors, their heads bent over laptops and legal pads. This was my mission now. Not running toward danger, but protecting what we'd built. I'll donate, I said instead. And if you need consultation on financial tracking or safe house logistics, I can help remotely. But my fighting days are over. I understand, Rebecca said. You've earned your peace. She was right. We all had. That doesn't mean we're complacent. The security system still works. I still know exactly how long it would take to reach our emergency bags. Chief Hernandez still has our direct number. But those precautions feel routine now rather than desperate. Insurance rather than survival. Yesterday, Penny asked if she could invite her entire class to her 9th birthday party. That's 23 kids, I pointed out. I know, but I want everyone to see our house, to meet our family, not hide from the world, show off for it. Okay, I said, but you're helping clean up afterward. She hugged me fiercely. Thank you for making us safe, Mommy. I hugged her back, remembering the terrified little girl who'd once whispered about the man with candy. Now she's confident enough to invite her entire class into our sanctuary. That's victory. Not just surviving, but thriving. Not just escaping the monster, but building something so beautiful that the monster's shadow can't reach it. We did it. All of us, together. We won.